This is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Ayin Hey. We're holding towards the bottom of Ayin Dalid Amid Beis. We are on the end of the narrow lines. Kufa, as the Gemara quotes the aforementioned din that was just said, which was Amar Avuna Amar Rav Maide Bekinas Va'achikach Bo Eidim Potter. What is the story? We know that the rule is Maide Bekinas is potter. One is never liable to pay a kanas, to pay a fine imposed by Bezdin, in a scenario in which he is a maidem to the obligation. Says the Gemara, maidem b'kanas. And then what happens if Edim comes subsequently and they say that there is indeed such an obligation? Says the Gemara, there is a p'tur, still because of the original haida. Asks the Gemara on the first wide line, Eisvei Rav Chisda l'Rav Huna. Ma'isa Rav Gamliel shesimas ayin tevi avdoi. There was a story with Rav Gamliel in which he blinded the eye of Tevi, his servant. V'haya sameach simcha gedayla. And he was very happy. Matzah Rav Akiva, Matzah Rav Yeshua Amar Lo Yati Yadesh Tevi Avdi Yatza L'Cheiros. He found Rav Yeshua and he said, "Do you not know that my slave, my Eved Tevi, is going free? He's no longer going to be my Eved." Amar Lo Lama. Why is he going free? Amar Lo Shesiamti Ezeinai. Because I blinded his eye. Amar Lo Ein Bidvarecha Klom. No, he's not going to go free. Why? Shekvar Ein Lo Eidim. Why is he not going to go free? Says the Gemara, because there are no Eidim that would happen. Hayesh Eidim, says the Gemara, Chayif. So what's the obvious implication? That even though Rav Gamliel was maida, that he was the one that blinded the eye, the implication is if there are subsequent Eidim, then he would indeed be chayiv. So we see now, like Rav Huna Marav, that if one is maida, then Eidim come, there is a chiyav. First, let's just point out why was Rav Akiva, why was Rav Gamliel so happy? The reason he was so happy, look at Rashi, 5 lines to the bottom. Rashi says, really, Rav Gamliel wanted to free this person, Tavi, and allow him to be a Yid. Everybody says, we've learned, one is not allowed to free an Eved. And therefore, Rav Gamliel was stuck between a rock and a hard place. But over here, he was so excited. He was excited that because he blinded his eye, the Eved's now going to go free. But Yeshua says to him, no, because there are no Eidim. So the implication is, if there are Eidim, then he would be obligated. Says the Gemara, even though there was a Haidah, there was an admittance of the Baal. So seemingly, not like Rav Huda Marav, who said, Eidim is going to be Potter. Amar Le, Rav Huna responds, Shiny Rav Gamliel. Rav Gamliel is different to Loi Bifnei Bezdin Oidi, because he did not admit in front of Bezdin, and therefore his admittance doesn't have the full halachic implications of an admittance, and that's the reason why if Eidim were to have come, he would be chayiv. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Rav Yeshua Bezdin, whom Rav Yeshua, which is whom he admitted in front of, was the Av Bezdin. So says the Gemara, how could it be that his admittance doesn't have the taikef, doesn't have the power of being admitted in front of Bezdin? Says the Gemara on top of Ayin He'am and Aleph, Shalai be Bezdin who. You know why? Havikai. Because they weren't into Bezdin. It's true, he was the Av Bezdin, but it wasn't in front of a Bezdin. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Vatani on the top line of Ayin He'am and Aleph. Amar Loi Rav Yeshua said, Ein b'dvarecha klum. Shekvar oidi so. Because you've already admitted, which sounds like that even if Eidim would come later, he would not be chayiv. My love tanohi. So do we not see that this din of Rav Huna is the machlekes Tanoim, because now we have a different brisa that says ein b'dvarecha klum shekvar haydasa, which implies even with Edim there would be no chiyuv, like Rav Huna Amar Rav. So we have one brisa. Hi Tana Damar Shekvar Ein L'cha Edim. Savram Kazach Bal Edim Chai, which is the first brisa. Hi Tana, this brisa we just quoted Damar Shekvar Dasa. Savram Kazach Bal Edim Potter. Says the Gemara. Seemingly it's a machlekes tanaim between the two brises. So Rav Huna Amar Rav is shari in this machlekes tanaim. Says the Gemara like 7 lines down. The first one line is Dekuliyama Dalit Chaf Ayin. The kuliyama moedigazach ba'edim pot ubahaka miflagi. So what is the machlekes in these braysos? Hi tanadamash kvar ein l'chaidim savar chutz lebezdin havei vaytachdanim shekvar adasa savar bebezdin hu. I mean, they both really are in agreement, like Rav Huna Amar Rav, that moedigazach ba'edim will be potter. The reason why over here it seems differently is whether it's inside or outside of bezdin. Says the Gemara Itmar, continuing this din, Maide Beknazach Ba Edim Rav Amar Potter Ushmuel Amar Chayiv. Says the Gemara, in the scenario where one is Maide and then Edim comes, so we started off with Rav Yehuna Amar Rav that said it's Potter. Says Marchu, but Shmuel holds Chayiv. Amar Rava Bar Hayilai, my time of the Rav, where does Rav get his din? That you'll be Potter. Says the Gemara, as the pasuk says, "Himatzei be'edim, tam timatzei b'dayanim." We learn out from the pasuk, "Im himatzei," that's referring to edim. Timatzei is with dayanim. Prat, that excludes a marshias atzmai, one who incriminates himself. Says the Gemara, Lamali, why do I need this pasuk to tell me one who incriminates himself, one who is a maid on his own is potter? We have to learn that out from the fact the pasuk says the one that the dayanim find guilty pay double, which teaches us that one who is not found guilty by the dayanim, but rather on his own accord admits, will be potter. Elishmamina. So what's the extra pasuk teaching me? The extra pasuk is coming to teach me about this din of if the edim come after the Haidah, that they're still going to be potter. That's how Rav learns of the extra pasuk. Ushmuel Amr Lacha. So how does Shmuel respond? Because Shmuel holds, as we just said, you're going to be chayiv. Ushmuel Amr Lacha. Ahumi Baile Liganov Atzmai. No, that pasuk need for the actual Ganov to teach me that not only is the Shomer who is Tayin Geneva, and he's the one that actually steals, pays Kefal, but rather the Ganov himself, Kedetani Chizkiah, as we've learned, the brisa of Chizkiah. So that's the Makar of Rav, and that's Shmuel's rebuttal. Eisvei Rav L'Shmuel, continues the Gemara, that Rav, who holds Moed V'Knazach Ba'edim is potter, asks to Shmuel, who holds Moed V'Knazach Ba'edim Chayiv. Says the brisa, Re'edim Shemisham Shemu Ba'im. The Ganav sees Edim about to come into Bezdin to say that he stole the Amar, and therefore he admits Ganavti. But he says, I only stole, but I didn't slaughter or sell the item. What's the halacha? He only pays the keren, but not the extra payments. So what do we see? We see because he was moide, even though edim are clearly subsequently coming, we see he's going to be potter, like the shita of Rav. So asks Rav to Shmuel, but you hold. In this case, you're going to be chayiv. Amar le, Shmuel responds, hacha b'mayaskinan. Kigayin shechazroi edim lachayrehem. The edim turned around, says Shmuel, it's true that he saw edim coming, but they didn't end up coming. And that's the reason why, in this case, there's going to be a p'tur. But indeed, if the edim came, said Shmuel, he would subsequently be chayiv. Ask the Gemara 1 second. V'amdetani sefer Rav Lazar Rav Shimon Aimer Yavo Eidim V'Yidu. Rav Shimon says, Let the Eidim come and testify. Sounds that Tanikama holds that even if they come and testify, he's not chayiv like Rav. Amrli Shmuel. Shmuel responds, Lav Ika Rav Lazar Rav Shimon. The Koi Kavasi. Anad Amri Rav Lazar Rav Shimon. What's the kasha? I hold like the Seifa, like Rav Lazar Rav Shimon, that even if they come afterwards, there will be the Petur. Meaning, the Gemara is explaining that it's true that according to Tanakam, he holds like Rav, that when one is Maida, even if Eidim come afterwards, there'll be a Petur. Rav Rav Shimon argue, and they say that no, if the Eidim come, Im Yavai Eidim, then it'll be Chayiv. So says Shmuel, yes. So I hold like Rav Shimon. So based on that detail, says the Gemara, let's do some math. Lishmuel, as we just explained, he's going with Rav Shimon. Vadai Tanohi. L'Rav milema Tanohi. But according to Rav, do we have to explain this? The machlekes Tanohim? No. L'cha Rav and Adam Yafil Rav Shimon. I could hold even like Rav Shimon. Why? He said you're chayiv. And can the Rav Shimon awesome? There's a special din over there because he's only being maideh because he sees the Eidim coming. B'isusa the Eidim. Avlacha the maideh ma'atzma. I feel Rav Shimon says Rav would be maideh to me that there would be a patur. So Shmuel indeed is going to be shari in this machlekes, but Rav removes himself and says he can hold according to everyone. Amar Rav Hamnuna, says Rav Hamnuna, I can explain Mistavra Milsa the Rav. Rav is Mistaver in what scenario? Be'oimer ganavti ubo eidim sheganav. Potter shechayv atzay v'keren. Because he already obligated himself with Karen, so the Eidim subsequently testify, still going to be Potter. Aval Amr like ganavti, he said I didn't steal. Ubo eidim sheganav, Eidim said he did steal. V'chazra Amr ganavti umacharti. Then he was masking and he added on Gitavachti Umacharti. I started and sold the animal by Eidim and then Eidim come with that diesel. Shetavachu Machar Chayiv Shari Potter Atza Miklam because he absolved himself entirely. So says Rav Amnuna, that's only in the first case is going to be where Rav will apply. Amar Rava says Rava nothing doing. Kabachti Lesabi Dvei Rav. I argued on the Chachamim in the yeshiva of Rav as follows. The whole Rav Gamliel, Poiter Atza Miklam Have. Rav Gamliel, again, in the original story in which we started today, admitted that he blinded the eye of Tevi, was one that parted himself from playing. And yet, Have V'kamar Le Rav Chisda Le Rav Huna. And yet, Rav Chisda said to Rav Huna, V'lo Kamashani Le. Rav Chisda said the story is a kash Rav Huna, and Rav Huna did not answer him, saying that it doesn't apply in this case. So clearly, the fact that Rav Gamliel was moidem did not make him chayiv at all. So you, Rav Hamnuna, are limiting the din of Rav. But we see for the story of Rav Gamliel that is not true. It's Marnami, says the Gemara, but even though we seemingly prove that Rav Hamnuna is not fully accurate, says the Gemara of a Bryce that says exactly like him. It's Manami Amrachev Rabam Rav Yechon Gnafti Ubaedim Sheganav Pot Shechayv Atzav Karen Aval Amar Loi Ganav Ubaedim Sheganav Chazar Mitaktu Mecharti Ubo Eidim Shetavach Umacher Chayv Shebater Atzmai Mi Klum. And further, Amar Ravashi says Ravashi, after we've proven the din of Rav Hamnuna, Mastis and Bryce Nami Deka. The Mishnah and the Braisa are indeed miduyak, like this point. Explains the Gemara, Masnisa Titanan. Konav al bishnayim v'tavach umachar al pi erechot al pi atz b'shat tashlum kefal v'enu tashlumet talim tashlumei dalad v'hei. Lamali asks the Gemara, what is the reason? Lamali detani konav al bishnayim. What's the reason that it says that he was ganav al bishnai? Listening, what should I have said? Ganav tavach umachar al pi erechot al pi atzmai. It should have said that he stole, he slaughtered, he sold by one aid and by himself. Then in that scenario, so what's the reason that the bright Mishnah lists Ganav al bishnayim? El alav, as we turn over to Ayin and Bey, says the Gemara, you know what the Mishnah must have been teaching me? El alav, hakamashlan ganav al pi shnayim, v'tavach al pi eirechad al pi atzmai. In that scenario, who do I mechayev atzmai b'karen? Who damrin al pi atzmai damid al pi eirechad? That's the scenario that we say that he's not chayev in Karen. Why? Because his own hodah is similar to that of an Eid Echad. In what way? Ma'al bi Eid Echad ki asi Eid Echad mitzaref vadei. Just like if there was only one Eid that originally testified, and subsequently another Eid comes, what's the halacha? Or he himself admits afterwards. The halacha is mitzaref. We combine the two. So too says the Gemara, mechayev al bi'atzmi nami. So too, if he obligates himself by admitting, he also Eidim Mechayev, when Eidim comes subsequently, he will be Chayev as well. Kiasu Eidim Mechayev, Avaganav Utavach Umach al Pi Oyal Biatzo, the Chayev Atzo Bekarin, Lo Yamrin al Biatzo, Tumad al Pi. So we will not say that they are comparable. So says the Gemara, that's the Mishnah. But now, what's the raya from the Brisa? The Brisa, the Tanya, Ro Eidim Shem Shenu Ba'im, says the Brisa, 3 lines on the white lines. If what happens, he sees the Eidim are coming to testify against him, so he says, V'amar, he admits, Ganafti Avalot Tavachti V'lamacharti, in Mishalem Karen. So says the Gemara in the last narrow line, Lamli Lemisni V'amar Ganafti, Avalot Tavachti V'lamacharti Nisni. Why does it have to say that he said, I stole, but I was not teveach u'moicher? Nisni, what should I have said in the first white line? Oy ganafti, oy tavachti u'macharti. Should have just said what he did, not what he didn't do. Should have just said, oy ganafti, oy tavachti u'macharti. Elahakam ashalan. So rather, what must the Brisa be teaching us? Time of the Omer ganafti the chayvatzay b'karen. Only because he originally admitted to the Geneva, that's why he's obligating the Karen the Potter. Kaima, that only because since he obligated himself in the Karen, therefore, due to his Haida, therefore there's a Patur. Avalamar, if he denied the whole story, if he said, like a nafti, Ubaidim Sheganav, and he said he was Goineach, and then he said, yes, and I also was Tavech Macher. And Eidim come at that point also Tavech Macher. In that case, since he did not obligate himself in anything through his Haidah, Chayiv, he will then be Chayiv. Alma Haidah, Tficha Lav, Haidah, he is not considered Haidah to pater him when Eidim come subsequently. And therefore says the Gemara, there's a Mishnah in the Brisa proving the point of Rav Hamnuna. Says the Gemara, no. Amri Lohi, there's no Raya. 5 lines into the white lines. Why not? He Gufa Kamashwan, because the Brisa might be saying the case, which is it moida to the Geneva, but not to the Tvicha Mechira, is to teach us that Chiddush. That what? The Kivan the Amar Ganafti. Since he said he stole, Aval Gav the Amar, Loi Tavachti V'loi Macharti, even though he then denied Tvicha Mechira, Potter, he's Potter. Why is he Potter? My time with Tashlumei Dalad V'Hei Amar Achwana V'lo Tashlumei Arba V'lo Tashlumei Shloisha. Says the Gemara, there's a sidebar reason. It's true that this is not a riot of Hamnuna. So why over here will there be a tour from Dalad V'Hei? Because since he admitted and he doesn't pay the original karen, he's no such thing now as Tvicha Mechira paying 4 or 5. Rather, it would be only paying 3 or 4. And we don't find such a Mekar in the Torah to that, and therefore there's no raya to Rav Hamnuna. So says the Gemara, 8 lines into the wide lines. The first word in line is Amar Rachmana Lema Kitanai. Let's suggest that this discussion, Rav Yochanan, Rav Hamnuna, let's say when there's Aidah that makes one chayiv to pay the karen, whether that itself gets rid of a subsequent eidos, lema kitanai. Hayishnayim eidim sheganav. 2 people that's face own stove. Hayishnayim eidim haysay shetavach umachar. Hozmu eidim geneva. And then what happens? The Eidim Geneva were found to be Eidim Zaymim. Eidosh Habala makes us. So Balakulis was yesterday's daf, that when they were found to be Zaymim, once part of it is bottled, it's all bottled. But what happens if, Hozmo, Eidei Tvicha, if Eidei Tvicha were found to be Eidei Zaymimim, Ho Mishan Tashlumei Kefal, so he has to make Kefal, Vein Mishan Tashlumei Dalid, Gimel, and the Eidim have to pay Tashlumei Gimel, because that's the charge to Mechayev him. B'Shem Somchas Amru, Hein Mishan Tashlumei Kefal, Vu Mishan Tashlumei, Shleisha Lapar, Ushnayim Lyle. So Somchas makes a minor differentiation between the type of animal. Says the Gemara, what exactly is Somchas saying? Ahai koi Somchas. In what case is Somchas commenting? Let's say Somchas makes sense about Lakula. What's going on? Is Somchas arguing on the fundamental din of Eidim Shabbalim Miksaza about Lakula? Rather, Vela Seifa. Must be Somchas is talking about this Seifa. It says Mar Shabakam Rabbanan. So what's going on? The Rabbanan the Tanakama is right to Mishan Tashlumei Kefal, Mishan Tashlumei Gimel. So why would Somchas argue? Ela Milsa Achrita Ikaminai. Rather, says the Gemara, there must be something more going on. There's another level of the machlekes over here. Kegain in the following scenario. Ta'asu bei trey. We're about 20 lines at the bottom. The first line is bei trey. Kegain ta'asu bei trey. Amar le ganafti. Two Eidim came and said, you were gainev, you stole. Amar lehu, it's true. He admits it. Ganafti v'tavachti u'macharti. He admits the whole story, and he said, not only did I steal, but I also slaughtered and sold the animal. But he says it was not in front of these Eidim. What happens? And they bring, the Ganav brings Eidim that the Eidim were not there. And he causes them to be Eidim Zoymim, Deloy Ba'apayu Ganav. Again, Ruvain's Maidai stole the animal, but says Ruvain, it wasn't in front of you, Eidim. You know why? Because you weren't here at all. I'll bring proof. They're Eidim that were hanging out with you in Florida at the same time. And then Vasabalabayis Sadi. And then the Balabayis, the owner of the animal, comes and he brings Eidim. Vasidu Bey, the Ganav Tavach. And he brings Eidim proving that yes, it was stolen, and yes, there's a Tvicha Mechira, like the Balabai, like the Ganef was Maides. So even though the Braisa doesn't say this explicitly, what do we see? We see that in this case, seemingly the Eidim Zaymim should have to pay the Ganef Kefal, like he was trying to Mechayev him, but he would not have to pay for the Tvicha Umechira. Ubahaidas tvicha kamifliki. Says the Gemara, what is this machlekes between Rabbi and Somches? The machlekes is whether when he admits to the fact that he slaughtered, that he sold the animal, whether he says, yes, I stole the animal, just you weren't here, and I also was taveach u'moicher, would that pater him from the payments of Dalad Vehei for tvicha mechira? The Rabbanan Sav Yavagodas Geneva Machlas Eidim the Kamaida. Even though he only was Maidim because of Eidim, that was only on the stealing. But on the second part, that is Aida. Because there were no Eidim, and therefore he's Potter for the Tashlum of Dalad Vehi. For Somches Avar, no, Kiv the Dustin gave him Achlas Eidimu, the Kamaida, the Tvicha Lavaida, Vahanach Eidim, the Kazminu, Meshalmin, therefore the Eidim that becomes Zaymim, Meshalmin, they have to pay Tashlumei Kefel. The who and what's he gonna have to pay? Mishalin Tashlumei Gimel Apar Shnayim Li Ayil. And that's the way to differentiate this din of Sukkos and the Rabbanan, saying the Gemara that is their machlekes. We finish. Amar Ravacha Breid Ravika Loi. Says Ravacha in the son of Ravika Loi. This is not what's going on. We're 10 lines from the bottom. The first one line is Dir Rav. Amar Ravacha Breid Ravika Loi. They kuli alma. Everyone agrees that what? Haida the tvicha lav haidahi. For the ganav to subsequently say, yes, I stole the animal, but I also slaughtered it. That's not a haida. Ella be'ida shiata yochol as the minoi kamifliki. A different machlekes. So we're getting half of the concepts of makas over here. The machlekes is an eidos, which is impossible to be contradicted. Kegoin, Tasu Sadi, Vamrule, Ganavta, Vamrulu Ganavti, Vatavachti Macharti. Miu Lob if Nechem Ganavti, El Bavnei Pleni Pleni. And then Vasu Sadi Vizani Nutaloy Babayo Ganav. Yes, he stole a banana in front of those people, Vasu Pleni Pleni Vesidebe. Take on a Vagavachumachar, Ubahaka Mifli, so what's Machlekes? The Arbanan Savlavi, Shiat Yachlazimai, Vachaled, Shiat Yachlazimai, Havas Eidos. Anything which is an Eidos is not able to be contradicted, it's not Eidos at all. And so Ches argues and he says, no, Eidos Shiat Yachlazimai, Havya Eidos still has a din of Eidos. But says more one second, Law have Eidos. We already were Mukam, that is no din of Eidos. Answers more Shah. The leka le Eidos klal. There's no Eidos at all. Over here there is Eidos, just is not able to muzam. Therefore we'll have a din of an Eidos. So we'll pick it up from 2 lines to the bottom of Siyat to the Shemaya in the next shir.